Today is July 30th, 2014, and we are interviewing Grace Eileen Parker at Quincy, Illinois. Mrs. Parker is how old are you?
Almost 93, 92,
Okay, 92 years old. And what is your birthday?
September 30,
Of what year?
21, 24, 9/30/21.
Grace Eileen Parker was born on September 30th, 1921, and my name is Christopher Schultz, and I'll be your interviewer today. Let me ask you first some biographical details. Where were you born?
I was born in Adams County, Houston Township.
And when? Well, I guess we know when you were born. September 30th, 1921, correct?
Mhm.
Who are your parents?
Grace and Lauren Mecom, Mecum,
What did they do for a living?
Barbara.
And did they farm in Houston Township?
Started in Houston, then moved to Chili Township.
Chili, Chili, is it not?
Mhm.
And that's in Hancock County,
That is it.
but it's not too far from Houston Township, correct?
Not really.
And do you have brothers and sisters?
One brother had a brother.
What was his name?
James.
And
James Eldon.
and your family name was Mecom? Mecum?
That's my name through the Army, all the Army.
Was your brother a member of the military?
Yes.
What branch did he serve in?
Air Force.
Did he serve in the same era that you did, the World War II era?
He lived, I don't know, over about 40 miles from where we do. So he was in a different area, but he was still in Illinois. He lived in Illinois, but he wasn't that close to.
Did he serve in the Army during World War II?
Oh, yes.
And is he deceased?
Yes.
Did he see active duty in the overseas theaters?
Definitely.
Which
Definitely did.
which part of the war did he serve in?
He was in the Air Force. He was in Europe.
What did you do before you entered your military service? What did you do for a living?
I was at home. I just lived at home. I was going to college.
What college were you attending?
Gym City Business College in Quincy.
And what was your course of study there?
Bookkeeping, that line of work. They had typing and shorthand, but they told me I didn't need typing because I already had my typing pretty good. But
And were you attending Gem City College when you entered the military?
Yes.
Were you enlisted or were you drafted?
I enlisted.
Okay, and
they didn't draft women.
I didn't know that. What caused?
But I know of them. I guess I could have drafted, but
Let me ask
I
you.
don't know it.
Let me ask you this: what caused you to enlist?
There were all signs there. We need you around, and there was a war. People were fighting. They were getting hurt. And then a little later on, those that were had were in service in combat and stuff, and maybe wounded, and came back. They were able to do my desk job that I was doing, and I thought I just well give those guys a chance, and I would see what else there was to do.
Were you also employed at the time that you enlisted?
I was going to school.
Okay. Do you know about what date you enlisted in the Army?
Not the biggest right now.
Would it have been around 1943 possibly?
I don't know.
Did
My thinking is just so vague.
is there any reason why you chose the Army over any other branch of service?
I definitely did not want the Navy, so I thought the Navy had a nicer uniform. But I thought the Army was offered more things that I would be interested in and able to do.
What were the types of things that you were interested in doing as part of your military service?
Well, there were a lot of things that were interesting to do and stuff. I can't put down any one thing that I.
Where did you receive, I'm sorry, where did you receive your basic training?
I had thought about that for a long time. I can't tell you.
Do you know what type of job you were trained to do as part of your basic training, or following your basic training rather?
I really don't know how to answer that.
What were you assigned to do as your part of your initial military training?
You know, that's been a while back.
Let me
Oh my.
let me ask you this. What kind of jobs were women allowed to do in the Army during World War II?
Well, mention something.
Well,
Maybe get started.
did you take care of wounded soldiers?
I have spent time in hospitals.
Can you tell us about some of those experiences?
Well, I was at Walter Reed Hospital in Marston, D.C., and I was assigned there, and a lot of the wounded, and I don't know, I got especially interested. A lot of them come with only one leg and things like that, and I get interested in helping and working with those and trying to get them back and up and healthy. They're Walter Reed.
Go ahead.
And I don't know things I can remember about it. Some of the fellows, they'd be in wheelchairs or something. They'd go out in the yard and play. Maybe 3 or 4 or 7 get together and they'd pass the ball around. And if some of us girls would come out and to go across. They'd accidentally overthrow the ball to see us go retrieve the ball for them. But no, things like that I do remember. But,
What stands out most in your memory about your service at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C.?
what stands out? That's been a few years back.
After you, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just thinking being able to talk with the patients. And back then, they'd have the oxygen tents and stuff that would need attention all the time. And I have a certificate that says that I'm a certified oxygen tent operator. So I think that's one reason I do remember that certificate that I earned by doing it. And do you know how much was involved in when they had the oxygen tents?
We don't know anything about oxygen tents these days, ma'am.
Okay,
Why don't you tell us about what you had to do in order to maintain those devices?
well, they'd be in a cot, and then they'd put a plastic sheet or something over up the form a frame above the patient and put the plastic sheet over it. And then you need to have cool air for your oxygen. And your oxygen bottle, you'd have to have somebody to watch it and see that it's working, that it's in the tent and things like that. And just the attention mostly that rather than what you might consider work, it just somebody there to make sure that it is working. So that's one of the things that I remember anyway.
How did you like military life and the routines of military service after you enlisted?
Well, I went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts for my basic training. After I enlisted, that's where I went. What was that leading to?
Well, you went to Fort, did you say Devens in
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts for basic training? How was that? What was that like?
Well, basic training is basic training. We did our marching, we had our parades, and things like that. That was pretty much our basic training. And I don't know.
What happened after basic training?
We got assigned to somewhere.
Do you remember where they assigned you first?
I don't remember what it was called.
What was it? Was it straight to Walter Reed Hospital, or was there some more training that you did before you started taking care of the soldiers?
There was training.
Did you go to New Guinea?
Hmm?
Why don't you tell them about New Guinea?
Well, That came much later,
Yeah,
quite a bit after.
yeah, I see that. Um, I guess did they give you some training in other areas such as logistics, supplies, inventories, that type of thing?
Before we went overseas, we had overseas training, and that included marching and stuff like that.
Did you receive any kind of weapons training or small arms training or anything like that?
I never saw a gun or sword or anything like that.
After you went to Walter Reed, do you remember where you went next?
I, I can't think where I discharged from.
You evidently, based upon some of your biographical information, you departed at some point for the Pacific Theater of Operations. Do you remember that?
I remember going across the Pacific.
How was that?
Very long. And I don't remember how many days it took to get us where we were going.
Do you remember what port you departed from on your voyage?
San Francisco.
And do you remember the name of the boat?
There was a Lurline, and the Lurline had been a luxury boat in Florida, and it wasn't a luxury then with in a room that see in the boat where they had their cabin, and a lot of times it's just room for 4. We had 8, and it took us 18 days to go across.
Was Lurline, was that the name of the boat?
Lurline. That was as it was well, not a troop ship then, but they made it into a troop ship, and we were crowded in there.
What was the food like on the boat?
We got to eat twice a day. I can remember. I can't remember too much about the food, except they had hard-boiled eggs. Just containers full of hard-boiled eggs. Help yourself. And I like hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't know what you interrupted.
Did you make some friends on the boat going over?
Sure.
Any remembrances that you'd like to share with us about your travel across the ocean to the Far East?
Well, some of us, I don't know whether it just had to be sergeants, would be assigned for the decks of the ship, different decks. You'd be assigned for this deck for this day, or certain time or something. But
Were you already a sergeant by then?
well, somewhere along there, yes. but
You were in charge of a number of other young ladies.
not really.
What was your job?
I don't know what to tell you. My job, but how to describe it even.
When you got to your destination, do you know where the ship dropped its anchor? What the port was there?
Uh, well, I knew one place that the ship could not, it had no pier to go to. It had no pier to go to. It could just go up so close to the coast. So we climbed over the thing, down the rope ladder, and got into a duck or whatever they call those water ground machines. And how I got one off the boat at one place, I remember. Over and down the ladder.
Where was your final destination?
I think there's New Guinea.
Okay. And do you know why you went to New Guinea?
There was work to do there.
What kind of work do you recall?
Mostly at that time it was supplies. And uh, I ended up at the headquarters, head service of supply overseas. And we had different bases that would have, as they worked up, AF. And I think the end, I was at base AF. And it was the headquarters for supplies. Now, if base B were low and needed something, they would tell our main supply base that they were low and needed stuff. So our base then would either supply them, know where there'd be some supply for them to get, or we would have to order from the States for them. And
What kind of supplies are we talking about here?
signal corps supplies, flashlights, light bulbs, this and that, a bolt or a screw, or what kind of supplies would signal corps need?
And
A lot.
did you find that supplies were always able or easy to be located?
The setup we had, base A, B, C, D, we were at F. Yes, we had connections there. We would know base B had some, and then if base B didn't have, we'd check another until we see if something was in our area or if we had to order from the state. And that took a lot of carbon paper.
We what kind of commanding officers did you have? Were they men, women? How did that work?
A lot of times a man had our company. Young fella. He seemed like he was about my age there. And he was my boss. But no, he was very nice. He knew what he was doing. And even if he was a young fellow, I didn't have an old boss.
What kind of things were you specifically assigned to do?
Mostly office work, typewriter, and carbon paper.
Was
What they have now to work with, oh, what we could have done with it.
so New Guinea at that time was far behind the lines of combat, was it not?
I don't think I was ever very close to combat.
Did you directly supply units that were involved in the combat?
We've helped.
When you were in New Guinea, did you get an opportunity to have leave or liberty?
You don't know, do you get it? The WACs especially had their area, and we pretty much stayed within our area. I did one time get to go out and see a tribe area, but we had to have a truck to go in, and the driver would have to have a gun before we could go out. And I did get to go see one tribe, and it was out in the jungle. The truck had a hard time kind of making the way back to it, but it was interesting. We were curious, and they were curious. So the thing I remember about it, it was shortly after Christmas, and I was overseas, and the ones from Walter Reed had sent me a Christmas package, and in the package did have this and that, just a collection of things. And one of the things is one of those toys you put a string on a spool, and then you
Like a top?
yo-yo
Oh, yo-yo.
thing. And our officer, I told him he was a young fellow, saw I had that, and he wanted to use it, and he was an expert at that thing. Well, we got there with the tribe in that area, and he was walking along there playing with the yo-yo, and the chief of the boats there saw that thing, that spool, and up and down and everything. He was so excited. He wanted that.
Did he get it?
He got it, but we traded for it.
What was received in return for the yo-yo?
A grass skirt. Did you see it? Did you see it? Mm-hmm. That's part of
It. Yes, it seems like a mini skirt.
it.
But that's the actual grass skirt that was traded for the yo-yo in New Guinea, correct?
Yes. Now, it's dried up now, but no, that'd be more, more than twice the main size. The thing was, I brought it home and had it around. And then we had two girls, and they got to where they were interested in what's that, and they started playing with the grass skirt until it started coming apart. And that's my grass skirt.
Well, that is wonderful.
But it was green when they but
Apart from that, a very amusing interlude with the natives. Did you have any other experiences on New Guinea that you'd like to relate to us today?
no, I need to think.
Take your time. And we can go on to other things too if you'd like.
Let's try other.
After you were stationed in New Guinea, did you have some other assignments in the Pacific Theater during World War II? Were you stationed in the Philippines or anywhere close to that area of the Pacific?
I was in the Philippines.
Do you remember what part of the Philippines you served?
Not too far from Manila. I was in Manila when the war ended.
And what was your job in Manila?
A lot of typing.
Were you assigned to the Philippines after the United States forces reoccupied the Philippines?
I don't know. They were there and I went anyway. I don't know whether I'd be first.
Was there any combat activity around Manila when you were stationed there?
I never saw combat.
And while you were stationed in Manila, were you primarily, once again, involved in clerical and office duties? Do you recall who your commanding officers were when you were stationed in the Philippines?
I can't remember names.
Did you establish long-term friendships or relationships with any of your comrades that you served with while you were stationed in New Guinea or the Philippines?
Well, yes, I did establish some that we continued for quite a while.
All right. Any of your comrades and fellow members of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps still alive?
I can't recall who it'd be now.
How about contact with family and friends back home while you were so far away? How did you maintain that contact, if any?
We could write a letter,
Did you do quite a bit of that?
considerable.
And you kept a diary, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And are there any particular experiences that you had while you were stationed in the Philippines that you'd like to relate to us or preserve on this interview?
You know, I was thinking about that, and I thought I had something definite. And now I can't think of
Well, I've got a few more questions for you, and if it comes to mind, just
Oh.
cut right in and let us know, okay? So you were in the Philippines when the war ended, correct?
yes.
What was that
I
like?
was in Manila.
Manila, that's the capital of the Philippines, correct?
Mhm.
Do you recall what the atmosphere was like when the war ended in Manila?
I don't know. It wasn't. Well, there in Manila, they had trouble with the Japanese and getting a definite end of the war and stuff. And you'd think it had ended. Ooh, we did think that war had ended. That Japan had surrendered, and then you find out that they left and hadn't made it definite that day. So there were 2 or 3 days there that we thought that it was definitely ended, and it hadn't. He left without really uh, quitting, and
Were there still some Japanese military units in the Philippines that didn't get the message about the war being over?
probably. But then they had this deal where I think in some of my papers there, the second surrender of Japan of the Philippines. So it, there were the two surrenders, and yes, there were still Japanese enemies, still enemies a little while that hadn't got word that it was over.
Did you have much interaction either, well, on the Philippines, did you have much interaction with the native Filipinos?
The Filipinos were our friends. We were protecting them.
And did you, yes, did you have some friendships and acquaintances that you made among the native population?
Well, nothing too close. I don't remember many individuals, anything of the Philippines, uh, Philippines, but they were our friends.
Did you have any experiences with Filipino culture and society in general that you found interesting?
I don't know how to answer. Uh, they were different people. They were interesting, but not close friend deal lot.
What did you do when the war ended? Did you stay on in military service for some time after that, or did you go back to the States?
I was ready to get out.
And how long was it after the final Japanese surrender that you were discharged from service?
No idea.
Where did you go after your assignment in the Philippines was over?
Back to Illinois.
And where in Illinois did you go?
Local.
I'm sorry?
Local. I've lived
Oh.
near Bowling all my life.
And did you go back to school or did you go to work after you came back?
That's another story, I guess. I got discharged, or discharged. Be the was 17th of December, no, 14th of December. I got out of service.
1945.
Anyway, that was the 14th of December. The 3rd of March, we got married. So I didn't do much in between there.
And you got married to Donald E. Parker.
Only guy I've had keeping him.
Is he still alive?
Sure, he's here today.
And he is a World War II veteran as well, correct?
Definitely. He's my hero.
Is he being interviewed also?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Well, he knows him.
Yeah. And but you did not. Did you know each other during World War II?
We went to school in Bowling High School.
And
But he's older than I. He was a senior and I was a freshman in high school.
Well, then you have been married for an extraordinarily long period of time then, have you not?
A few years, yes.
About 68, 69 years maybe?
Maybe.
And during that period of time, did you raise your own family?
4 kids. Grandson here.
And what type of work did you and your husband engage in after your marriage?
Farmer.
And are you both retired from farming now?
There he is.
I see him. Are you both retired now?
Can you be retired?
That's a good question. Do you still live out on the farm?
Yes.
And where's the farm located?
Just off of the new highway.
Off of Highway 336?
We're in Hancock County, right near the Adams County line.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So
What type of farming operation did you or do you have?
our son does it now. Okay.
I would like to just ask you a couple more questions, and then if you have anything else to add, that would be great. But is there anything that you recall about being stationed in New Guinea or the Philippines in terms of entertainment or relaxation time activities that stand out in your memory at all? Any entertainments or things like that?
Well, in New Guinea, we had a fenced-in area,
Right.
and we were not supposed to get out of that area without somebody with a gun. So we didn't go much. But there was always a movie. They always had movies, it seemed like, to go to.
Who was your favorite?
It was an outside setup. Who was my favorite? No, I can't think of his name. Long-legged fellow that did some dancing and stuff in the show, but Right now, I can't think of the shows that were popular at that time.
Is there anything else about your military service and your service to our country that you'd like to share with us or with future generations?
I thought maybe you could help me out a little bit. What was it they were talking about, the service that be interesting today?
Tell you what, let's stop for just a second, if you don't mind.
It is. The way it was.
Your medal. But
Oh, yeah. Now, I'm entitled to 6 of those.
Oh,
Now, I just had one, and I don't know how I got that, and it just came in the mail someday from Pennsylvania. And how did they get my name even? I'm Parker now, and have been for a number of years, and how'd they know that I even had this one coming? But I do have on my discharge paper list of the 6 awards that I earned. I think that's the word they used, that I had earned those awards.
you provided some biographical information to us today that includes the following information about your decorations, and those include the Women's Army Auxiliary Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Theater Campaign Medal, the Philippine Liberation Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, and the Good Conduct Medal.
Okay,
And are there any other?
that's on my discharges. I had earned them, and I've not been able to get them, and I've tried with the VA. And
Is there?
after all these years, I'm ready to quit trying, I guess.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today about your service to the country?
I'm glad I did. I think I feel rewarded for what I was able to do, that I was lucky in assignments. And I think kind of the thing, my mother died when I was 16. And that in the past, looking back, and that's my saddest time, I think. So I've had a pretty good life.
Well,
Very good.
okay.
Okay.
We certainly appreciate you doing this for us. This is a great service also.
Well, I know there's stuff that probably more interesting than discussed. But anything you could do to help, I'd like to see what the other medals look like.
I think that can be done. But if there's anything else that you'd like to say, otherwise we will go ahead and conclude our interview today, ma'am.
Well, I'm having trouble recalling and stuff
You
as
seem
is, but
you seem to have done a fantastic job of recalling some very interesting and specific details regarding your service. So we will go ahead and conclude the interview at this point. Thank you very much.